The U.S. supply of diesel is down to just 25 days. Now, let's not panic and say that we've only got 25 days left of diesel left here, but if the worst should come to worst and a major natural disaster hits and takes out our production, that means we are out in 25 days. So we'll talk about that, what that means, and what we do with that. In other news, more Biden news, Biden comes in and contradicts himself on the federal deficit, telling us it's the largest one-year drop in American history, and yet keeps talking about the spending and the debt and everything else. So we'll go over some of that and what happens with that. Darrell Brooks' trial, even though we haven't really been paying attention to it because our friends in the mainstream media have been making sure that they talk about other things going on right now, has been dragging on. So we'll talk about some of that, some of the highlights from that out of week 3, and well, why we think that this guy might be screwed and seeing the inside of a jail cell for the rest of his life. And our neighbor to the north, Justin Trudeau, enacts a ban on the sale and transfer of any and all handguns in the nation of Canada. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome into midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Have to give a happy anniversary to the Lego company, because I just saw right before we went live that on this day in 1961 the Lego brick was patented, and decades of fun and creative building have followed from that. So congratulations, Lego, to 61 years of teaching young boys that they want to lift up trucks. It's always a good time. It's always a good time. Anyway, welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a fair amount to go over here. I do have a hard out, obviously, first off, because Stephen Uramus is out on at 10. So we want to make sure that we defer to him so he can because we have so much crossover audience. You guys understand. And I actually do have an appointment across the state at 2. So I got to make sure that I can get up there, get fed, and get out and make sure I'm over there by 2. And, well, there might be actually some good news coming off that as well. So we'll see what happens with that and what happens going forward from that. But we've got a ton of stuff out of my personal life to go over here. So strap yourselves in. A lot of Biden news today, by the way. A lot of Biden news because, well, he's going on a sniff tour of America. Also, just pointing out here, the founder of Occupy Democrats just blocked me on Twitter. That's another one of those big, safe accounts that they spam in front of you all the time that I no longer have to see because he has blocked me. And he is putting out a Twitter alternative. He actually just created it, a Twitter alternative called Tribal Social. That is right, TRIB. I mean, he didn't go back out and say AL, but TREIBEL social. If you want to go into a left-wing echo chamber. Because the only people who are going to be allowed on that, it's our alternative because Trump and Elon Musk are taking over the social media and I won't have them impose their will on us. So, you're making a social media that caters and only allows people on who think the same way about as you do about society and politics, and you're calling it tribal social? Really? And you didn't find a problem with this? Anyway, before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Pritt and KTZed over on Twitter. Go check out Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks podcast, and PJ Patriot, wherever you get your podcasts or listening there, because these are all great people who like to bring you news and culture by the common man for the common man, or in Britt and Katie's case, by the common woman for the common woman. So go check them out. It is going to be a great time, and let's get into it. Let's get started. Let's talk about the news. We will start, as we always do, with finance. The Dow climbing on Friday, and the future is also turning up right now. So the Dow ending up another 700 points up at 31,082.56. Are we honking right now? I think we're honking right now because under any other normal circumstance, when you're sitting in a situation when you only have 25 days of diesel left in there and in the tanks, I don't know what these investors are thinking and why it would be a good idea to be in the markets now. Obviously, they do this more than I do. They know and understand how to analyze trends that I don't, but I'm sorry. I look at some of this stuff and say, how? How can you possibly be doing this? But we will see what happens with that. Looking at Bitcoin, which is at 19,329.10, and that is falling off the pedestal that it gave itself up over the weekend here. It looks like there was a spike up to just over 19.6 over the weekend after staying steady from Friday onwards, and it did start to collapse again this morning, so we will continue to watch the Bitcoin and see what happens with that. No peaks up to 20,000 yet, but we did have some troughs over the weekend down into the 18,000 range, so that's what we see for Bitcoin. Gas is a little bit of a mixed bag around the Madison area. Some of the stations went up, some of them went down. The quick trips on the far east and west side are both sitting at 340. The one closer to the Isthmus is at 350. The Amoco on the Isthmus has come up to 380. The Speedway out on the far west side has also come up to 380. With a BP also at the entrance to the Isthmus at 346. So a little bit of mix. Some stations are going up, some stations are going down. We will see what happens with that and where that goes. I can't believe what diesel is at still, though. But, you know, when you only got 25 days worth of it, I don't know how they did that with diesel, though. Honestly. I'm going to be completely open with you. Now, a part of this is coming off the fact that there's more demand for diesel right now. More people went out and got diesel pickup trucks, on top of the fact that that is the really only way for commercial freight to get around. So while there's less demand for gas because driving that you don't need to do, recreational driving, is down because, you know, who can afford to pay $4 a gallon for gas? They're probably got a bunch of that still sitting in the stockpile. But I mean, diesel fuel is a byproduct of the refining process of crude for gasoline. So you would think you'd be getting it in somewhat equal portions. But unfortunately that is not the case, so we will continue to watch this and see what happens with this and where this goes. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. From Investors Business Daily, Dow futures rise ahead of key economic data. Tesla skids after cutting China prices. From Scott Latonin. Dow futures rose Monday, looking to add to Friday's powerful stock market gains ahead of a week of high-powered earnings reports. Tesla skidded more than 3% after cutting Model 3 and Model Y prices in China by as much as 9%. On Monday, the Purchasing Managers Index for the manufacturing and services industry is due out at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. let's put a pin in that because we will be able to look at what's happening with the inflation. While the manufacturing index is expected at 51.2, while the services index is expected to remain in contraction at 49.3, according to Econoday estimates. Another round of noteworthy third quarter earnings results are expected to roll in this week with key reports from Dow stocks Apple, Boeing, Chevron, Merck, Microsoft, and Visa, among others. Tech giants Alphabet and Meta Platforms will also report. Shipping giant FedEx declined 1% on Monday after Wells Fargo downgraded the stock from an overweight to equal weight at the lower target of 160. EV giant Tesla skidded more than 3%, while Dow's tech leader Apple and Microsoft moved higher ahead of today's stock market open. Software heavyweights ServiceNow led the Dow in early trade, up nearly 3%, after Guggenheim upgraded the stock to buy. AutoZone, Cardinal Health, Molina Healthcare, and Texas Roadhouse, as well as Dow stocks, Chevron and Merck are among the top stocks to watch. Keep in mind that the new market rally is the perfect time for investors to put their watch lists into action and to hone their pyramiding technique. Young rallies, particularly those fighting bear markets, often fail. Pyramiding provides a method of moving into new stock positions incrementally in order to minimize risk to capital. Cardinal and Texas Roadhouse are the IBD leaderboard stocks. Merck and Molina were featured in last week's Stocks Nearby Zone column, along with two other stock ideas. AutoZone was the IBD stock of the day in recent weeks. On the futures, ahead of Monday's open, the Dow futures rose 0.85, while the S&P moved up 0.8, and the Nasdaq advanced 0.6 in morning action. Among the ETFs, the Nasdaq 100 Tracker Invesco QQQ Trust traded up 0.5%, and the SPDR S&P 500 ETF rose 0.8. China's Hang Seng dove 6.4 on Monday, closing at its lowest level since April 29, 2009. Xi Jinping continued to consolidate his power, appointing a number of supported to the party's most powerful decision-making body after securing a convention-defying third term. Meanwhile, the markets in the UK and Europe ran higher, picking up Friday's U.S. optimism towards a possible shift in Federal Reserve's mood. Frankfurt's DAX and CAC 40 in Paris traded more than 1.5% higher just past midday. The 10-year yield wavered on Monday, easing down to 4.17 after Friday's fall to 4.21. Last week, the 10-year yield settled at its highest level since June of 2008. Oil prices declined more than 1% on Monday, pausing after a three-day win streak. West Texas Intermediate futures traded near $84 a barrel. So that's what we see coming up off the markets here. It's interesting, especially with the bond yields, that people are looking at this and saying, yes, I want to be into the markets right now instead of just sitting on cash. Which again, that in and of itself is failing by itself, but I mean, what's moving down faster, especially if we do drop into the 29, 28, 27,000 range, if we do get into a recession? Recessionarily, the cash will hold its value somewhat better than a stock market that's diving down 10, 15, 20, 25%. But hey, again, these guys go out and do this every single day. I yell about it into a microphone every day, so they obviously must know something more about this than I do. Let's look in at the housing market. From CNN, home prices are finally falling, but how low will they go? How low can you go? From Anna Bainey, the U.S. housing market is in the midst of a major shift. After 2 years of stratospheric price appreciation, home prices have peaked and are on their way back down. Yeah, that's like 6 months old, dude. But what home buyers and homeowners alike want to know is how much lower will prices go? The short answer, prices are probably likely to drop further, but not as much as they did during the housing bust. From the 2006 peak to the 2012 trough, national home prices fell by 27%, according to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller indices, which measures home prices. It was different in 2008 and 2009 because the drop in prices was because of a push from sellers, said Jeff Tucker, senior economist at Zillow. Because of foreclosures and short sales, there were a lot of extremely motivated sellers who were willing to take the loss on their homes. Plus, that housing crash came at a time when the inventory of homes for sale was 4 times higher than it is now. Current inventory is substantially lower than pre-pandemic levels, which has increased competition for homes, and that is keeping prices relatively strong. I would be surprised to see prices anywhere drop below what they were in 2019, said Tucker. There was some overheating in the housing market in 21 through the spring that pushed prices higher than what the fundamentals would support. Now they are coming down. With mortgage rates more than doubling since the start of the year, the calculations for a home buyer have changed considerably. The monthly principal and interest mortgage payment on the median priced home is up $930 from a year ago, a 73% increase according to Black Knight, a mortgage data company. When you factor in soaring mortgage rates along with elevated home prices and wages that aren't increasing as fast, buying a home is less affordable now than it has been in decades, according to Black Knight. But there may be some relief in sight for buyers. Economists at Goldman Sachs expect home prices to decline around 5% to 10% from the peak hit in June. Wells Fargo has recently forecast the national median single-family home price will drop by 5.5% year over year by the end of 2023. Wells Fargo economists estimate the median price of an existing single-family home to be $385,000 this year, up 7.8% from last year, but the growth will be a lot less than 19% year-over-year increase seen in 2021. The economists anticipate the median home price will fall to $364,000, a decline of 5.5% from this year. They predict the prices will rebound and rise again in 2024, with the median taking up 3.3% to $376,000 by the end of 2024. All right. There's a lot of words here and a lot of statistics here that we can come out and analyze and say number, percentage. But I look at something like this, especially coming out of CNN, and I say propaganda. And I don't say that lightly either when I come out and say propaganda. Because when I look at this, when I look at what's happening in the housing market, that's what they're saying in the housing market. And by the way, we were told back in 2007, 2008 that the housing market couldn't crash the way that it did back then either. What's happening right now, specifically, is that people are finding that they can't afford to live in the house that they bought in 2019, 2020, 2021. They can't afford that, and that's where the housing prices started to go up substantially. I remember when I was first looking at a house before I had gone out and fixed my credit, before I figured out what I needed to do to fix my credit, I was talking with another guy named Ed, oddly enough. And also, by the way, just a little side note off that, my dad came down and looked at a house with me, with the agent that I'd been working with. He came down here for that. We looked at a house. So, at that time, there were Edgar, J. Edgar, and Ed. I don't know what his full name was, the agent. I just know it was Ed. So there were 3 Eds looking at the same house, at the same time, in the same party. Figure that one out. What we're going to see, and the factor that they're not putting into something like this, is the fact that inflation keeps ticking up, wages are not keeping pace with them, and before we get to a point where this is not going to become a problem, the wages have to keep pace with what the inflation is doing. They haven't even caught up yet. I mean, I look at what I'm looking at right now. I got a 5% raise from what I've been sitting at since 2018. Yeah, that was when I got my last raise with that company. So I started making the wage that I had been making in 2018, and I got a 5% raise just this last year. From 2018 to now, prices are up 15%. My dollar has 15% less buying power, and I'm not the only one out there like that. So as people start to realize that they've got to start making a decision between the mortgage payment and the food on their table, especially if they have kids, one of the two of them is going to go. Now, I don't know if there's going to be a foreclosure crisis off of this, because the other side is we don't have the adjustable rate crisis coming out and hammering on people on top of that too. That was the other side of what was going on. And a lot of people looked at that and said, yeah, no, I'm not stupid enough to get into the adjustable rate side of things again. So their payments are at least consistent. They know how to budget for them and how to bargain hunt. That might keep us out of the 25% drop, but I do think that there's still going to be some really, really motivated sellers once they realize that the $3,800 a month mortgage that they could afford in 2019, just the money's not there for it anymore. But we'll see what happens with that. We'll continue to watch this and see where this goes. Let's talk Biden. From CNN. Appeals court pauses Biden student debt relief program while it reviews case. From Katie Labosco and Tierney Sneed. A federal appeals court put a temporary administrative hold on President Biden's student loan forgiveness program, barring the admin from canceling loans covered under the policy while the courts consider a challenge to it. The order from the 8th Circuit comes in a case brought by 6 Republican-led states asking for a preliminary injunction to halt the policy after a district court dismissed the case. Earlier this week, the effort is separate from the Wisconsin taxpayer group challenge to the program that was recently rejected by the Supreme Court. The appeals court gave the admin until Monday to respond to the state's request, and the states will have until Tuesday to reply to that response. The states had asked the appeals court to act before Sunday, the earliest date the Biden admin had said it would grant the student loan discharges. Once again, I have not seen an actual documentation that states how this is going to work. So either it doesn't exist or they've been very closely guarded with it. As far as I know, the only actual documentation that we have for this is a rousing speech from a guy who can't say 6 words without stumbling over them, much like your host here, and no actual documentation to back that up. There has been no legislation, there has been no executive order, as far as I know. And once again, if one of you sleuths finds this executive order, and I've been looking, put it in the Discord, and I will read it verbatim on air. In response to the pause, the White House press secretary, token diversity hire, encouraged borrowers to apply for the relief, saying the admin would continue to move full speed ahead in our preparations in compliance with this order and fight back against the Republican legal efforts to the program. Tonight's temporary order does not prevent borrowers from applying for student loan debt. Wait, no. This is John Pierre. Tonight's temporary order does not prevent borrowers from applying for student debt relief at studentaid.gov. And we encourage eligible borrowers to join the nearly 22 million Americans whose information the Department of Education already has. It does not prevent us from reviewing these applications and preparing them for transmission to loan servicers. The lawsuit, which was filed last month, was dismissed on October 20th by a lower court judge who ruled the plaintiffs did not have the legal standing to bring the challenge. In another win for Biden that same day, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett declined to refer the challenge from Wisconsin Taxpayers Group to the full court. The Biden admin is also facing lawsuits from AG Mark Brnovich, the conservative groups such as the Job Creators Network Foundation and the Cato Institute. Many of the legal challenges claim that Biden admin does not have the legal authority to broadly cancel student debt. He doesn't. And I would love to see in Discovery the video of Nancy Pelosi saying just that. Which, of course, was a campaign ad for her. Okay, just give us more House and Senate, because Biden doesn't have the authority to do it. So if you give us more members in both these chambers, Then we'll fix this for you. Lawyers for the government argue that Congress gave the Secretary of Education the powers to discharge debt in a 2003 law known as the HEROES Act. That's a stretch, by the way. I've read the HEROES Act. It's possible, but it's a stretch. I'm going to come right out and say that. Again, I'm not siding with the government on this, but just by the text in the HEROES Act, it's legally gray. If you stretch it and interpret the words just right, you can say, oh yeah, no, they've totally got the authority to do this. It's a stretch. So, well, I guess we'll see some fireworks off of that. We'll supposedly be getting a response today off that. The title card of today's episode, though, comes to us from Mr. Helton's favorite outlet, from his favorite politician. And of course, we are reading today from Bloomberg. Diesel supply of just 25 days poses problem for Biden. From Shunzi Zhu. Diesel demand is surging in the U.S. while supplies remain at the lowest seasonal level ever, according to government data released on Wednesday. The shortage of fuel used for heating and trucking is a key worry for the Biden admin heading into winter. And ahead of the November election, National Economic Council Director Brian Deese told Bloomberg TV Wednesday that the diesel inventories are unacceptably low and all prices are on the table, or all options rather are on the table, to build supplies and reduce retail prices, which may actually be a price spike. If you can get more truckers out of the market, your diesel supply will stay up, but it'll constrain your supply chain. The U.S. has just 25 days of diesel supply, the lowest since 2008, since the Energy Information Administration. At the same time, the 4-week rolling average of distillates supplied, a proxy for demand, rose to its highest seasonal level since 2007, while the weekly demand dipped slightly. It's still at the highest point in 2 years amid higher trucking, farming, and heating use. The diesel crunch comes just weeks ahead of the midterm elections and has the potential to drive up prices for consumers who already view inflation and the economy as a top voting issue. Retail prices have been steadily climbing for more than 2 weeks. At $532.4 a gallon, they're 50% higher than this time last year, according to AAA data. National stockpiles have drained as refiners entered maintenance season and as Russia's war in Ukraine tightened global supplies and limited imports. Market backwardation, where prompt deliveries are priced at a premium over future deliveries, has made building inventory extremely costly, feeding into a vicious cycle of tight supplies and price spikes. In New England, where more people burn fuel for heating than anywhere else in the country, stockpiles are less than a third of typical levels for this time of year. Yeah, that's actually an important one to look at when we talk about what's happening out there, because a lot of people haven't retrofitted their houses in New England. So you've got a lot of really old historic houses, and they're still oil heated. They still heat off of fuel oil, which actually surprised me when I went out there. Like, there are as many houses that I've been in New England as I've been in out in the country that are fuel oil heated, and that's a rarity around here at this point. Most of us have moved to propane when we're out in the country. Some relief is on the way. At least 2 vessels carrying around 1 million barrels of diesel are due to arrive in New York after being diverted from their original destinations in Europe. Delta Airlines Trainer Refinery in Pennsylvania is also returning from seasonal maintenance, which will increase regional diesel production. So, one thing to point out, number one, I would be curious to see exactly, if we've got just these 2 shipments here, how much that actually raises this right now, because unless it gets over, I would say 45 days, we're still in the same boat as what we were in before. So that would be something to watch. Now, again, I do want to point out, This does not mean that we're out of diesel in 25 days. I know a lot of people are coming out and panicking about that. There is a rolling production and a rolling ability. What it means when they say that diesel's at its low, that it's at 25 days, its lowest point since, well, in 40 years. What they mean when they talk about that is the fact that if some major disaster happened, a hurricane, a blizzard at the same time, an earthquake that shuts down all of our distilleries, then we could feasibly go for 25 days with the amount of diesel that we have, which would mostly be used in the repair process at that point. And I don't know that that number is also entirely accurate either. That's 25 days based on what we normally use, but front-end loaders, skid loaders, plow trucks, things like that, all run on diesel, and they run extra on diesel. So, regardless, I mean, it's not good news. And man, if I was in the admin right now, I'd be throwing nets outside of tall areas of the White House and the Washington Monument. But that's what we see for that. But he really is the president of the American people. From the Associated Press. One fluff piece. After two bad news pieces for Biden, let's do a fluff piece for him. One hug and one selfie at a time. Biden's mission to connect. From Zeke Miller. I could think of a lot better ways for him to connect with the people. One handshake, one hug, and one selfie at a time. If President Biden could greet every American this way, longtime allies say his approval ratings would soar. Biden has never been at his best in big speeches where his delivery can be stilted. His story is sometimes meandering. It's the end of his speech that often marks the beginning of Biden's favorite part of the event. The rope line, the parlance of political operatives, he whirls around, scans the crowd, and zeroes in on his first target for a one-on-one connection. And it's usually an underage girl who uses just that right brand of white rain. Zeke. Dude. I didn't pre-read this article, so I'm looking at this all new right now. Dude, I would have worded that differently. Zeroes in on his first target with a president that has a problem with sniffing. Did somebody proofread this before Zeke Miller put this out? It might be someone like Tim Eichinger, a Milwaukee brewery owner who asked Biden a question during a TV town hall 20 months ago, and has since had a one-on-one video conference with the president and seen Biden send a couple letters to his grandson. Oh, so a person in the stage who was specifically selected by the Secret Service and the TV producers because he looks good on camera. Zeke, you're not making your case really well here. It might be a small... Oh my God. I can't do this. I need to pre-read these articles. I can't do this. I can't do this with a straight face, you guys. I can't. No! What are you doing, Zeke? No! I didn't read it out loud. I just read a little bit ahead in this article. I can't believe these words are on the screen talking about a guy who's got a sniffing problem. No! Let me compose myself here. Whew. Whew. It might be a small child. Biden likes to carry some cash, so he can discreetly slip kids a few dollars. Ew! And encourage them to buy ice cream. It might be someone who stutters. They come in for special attention. I need to pre-read these. I really do. This is raw reaction. I found this after I hit the live button on OBS. Oh. I can't. Zeke, buddy. Come on, man. After Biden gave a speech on student loans on Friday at Delaware State University, there were plentiful handshakes and photos with students on the stage. Last Tuesday at a Democratic National Committee event in D.C., Biden invited one audience member backstage for a private photo, autographed some abortion rights signs that participants had been waving and mugging, and a handful of selfies. Aides say the 79-year-old has perfected his selfie arm, the products of which are widely shared on social media. Yeah, he has no idea what's going on, though. That's the thing. At an August event for Maryland Democrat gubernatorial candidate Wes Moore, Biden spent more than 75 minutes across 3 different rooms greeting people after the speech-making had ended. He drew cheers at when he grabbed a hold of a high school drum major's baton, and then posed for a photo before the marching band. This article went in a way that I didn't think that was going to go. I apologize for this. I've offended even myself at this point. And Fanning is coming in after this. The dirtiest person in our live chat is coming in after I went through all of this, by the way. I can't believe this article exists. I can't believe this got past the editor's board at the Associated Press. It might be a small child, and Biden likes to carry some cash so he can discreetly slip kids a few dollars and encourage them to buy ice cream. Okay, somebody on YouTube side, can you handle my dirty work for me here? All right. Well, now that that incredibly disturbing article is over, Biden interviews Days of Girlhood trans activist Dylan Mulvaney in Oval Office. President pledges support for gender-affirming care for children. Because of course he does. And by the way, this is Barbie Pouch Lady. President Brandon welcomed 6 progressive activists to the White House for the Now This News Presidential Forum. The Woke News website featured Democrat-friendly topics such as gun legislation, abortion access, the climate crisis, criminal legal reform, and economic instability and trans rights. One of the interviewers was trans activist Dylan Mulvaney. Mulvaney, a dude, begins the interview by saying, "Mr. President, this is my 221st day of publicly transitioning." Biden, a self-proclaimed Catholic, responded, God love you, man. Mulvaney, who lives in LA, responded, "I'm extremely privileged to live in a state that allows me access to the resources I need. And that decision is just between me and my doctors. But many states have lawmakers that feel like they can involve themselves in this very, very personal process. Do you think that states should have a right to gender-affirming health care?" Biden replied, I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that as a moral question. As a legal question, I just think it's wrong. You know, I think I was saying before we started, my son, the one I talk about, Bo, he used to be the AG for Delaware. He passed the broadest piece of legislation, man. Let me sniff your hair. Biden claimed his late son, Bo, was able to convince others to enact legislation that dealt with gender-affirming capability. So I feel very strongly, man, that you should have every single solitary right, including use your gender identity bathrooms, but public, man. Come on, man, just one sniff. I'm telling you, man. Do we have the video of that, or does this just go right off to the beginning? No, this is the whole thing. Burden. Mulvaney. It's a little bit... It's a long one. Let's go to that, though.
Your questions. We're going to move on now to trans rights. There have been many anti-LGBTQ+ bills introduced and enacted, outlawing things like gender-affirming healthcare and banning kids from playing sports. To go deeper into this issue, here with us today is Dylan Mulvaney, who's welcomed us into her life by, showing on social media her Girlhood series. Let's take a look.
My name is Dylan Mulvaney. I am a trans woman, and I am documenting my transition publicly on TikTok for the world to see. When people started watching and the numbers kept getting higher, I realized quickly how public my transition would be. Of course, I knew that there would be backlash and negativity. I try to not let the internet's words hurt me or my spirit. But do you know what does hurt? Seeing people in power and authority figures creating laws and bills that are actively trying to harm us trans humans, especially trans children. Our lives have become political talking points. Lawmakers in many states want to exclude us from participating in sports or getting proper health care. Some folks want to decide where we can use the bathroom. No one should have fear living in a state that they call home while being true to themselves. No one should have their lives put in danger because of who they are inside. That's why I'm sharing my story with the world. I'm using my platform to stand up for my community and for any of the little Dylans that deserve a clear path to their true identity.
Mr. President, this is my 221st day of publicly transitioning.
God love you.
Thank you. I am extremely privileged to live in a state that allows me access to the resources I need, and that decision is just between me and my doctors. But many states have lawmakers that feel like they can involve themselves in this very personal process. Do you think states should have a right to ban gender-affirming health care?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that. As a moral question and as a legal question. I just think it's wrong. I think I was saying before we started that my son, my deceased son, used to be the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. He passed the broadest piece of legislation that he, as Attorney General, was able to convince the legislature and the governor to sign that dealt with all gender-affirming capability. I mean, there's a lot of, sometimes they try to block you from being able to access certain medicines, being able to access certain procedures, and so on. None of that should be available. I mean, no state should be able to do that, in my view. So I feel very, very strongly that
None of that should be available. No, I'm on the wrong side of this one. No, they shouldn't be able to do that. And again, this is a person who got famous for referring to it as his Barbie pouch. Let's move off of that before I throw up. From CNN, Biden contradicts himself with victory laps on deficit reduction and student loan relief, experts say. From Matt Egan, President Biden took a victory lap on Friday for the biggest one-year drop in the federal deficit in American history. That's despite the fact that the deficits remain historically high and that all the record-breaking $1.4 trillion deficit drop is driven by the fact that emergency pinko pox spending has lapsed. Hours later, Biden championed his student debt forgiveness program, a program that completely wipes out modest deficit savings created by the Inflation Production Act. And that's, by the way, the fact that the Inflation Production Act actually doesn't wipe out any deficit savings. We've read it right here. The dueling narratives from Biden perplex some budget watchers who remain deeply concerned about America's mountain of debt. It does strike me as contradictory, Dan White, Senior Director of Economic Research at Moody's Analytics, told CNN on Friday. On net, the policies of the admin have increased the deficit, not reduced it. Maya McGuinness, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a deficit watchdog group, said besides the Inflation Production Act, the Biden admin has made the fiscal situation worse, not better. The White House is knowingly twisting the facts to tell you a very different story than a fair and accurate one, McGuinness told CNN on Friday, which CNN knows because they did that for 20 years. Asked about the optics of cheering deficit reduction hours before highlighting the student debt program, McGuinness was baffled. It seems a little insulting to the audience, she said. As though you could trick us by taking claim for fiscal responsibility, which isn't warranted, and separate from this huge deficit-busting executive order that is costing hundreds of billions of dollars. And then Dash Dabrowski came out and said, I am angry because now CNN is a right-wing outlet. The White House did not respond to a request for comment on the criticism. But David Kelly, chief global strategist at JP Morgan Funds, said the Biden admin does deserve credit for a strong economy that has helped to boost tax revenue. Well, that and the fact that they've taken away the middle-class tax cuts by calling them tax cuts for the rich, and you'll be paying for that too, just so you know. The economy is fully recovered from the pandemic, and this is helping push the deficit down, Kelly said. Yeah, it's kind of hard to come out and say, oh yeah, no. Haha. Yeah, we saw that coming. I don't have this on the stack, but I just see the headline over here. Autopsy report says Bob Saget had pinko pox and died as a result of blunt head trauma. It was the coup, don't worry about it. But looking over at this, and yeah, I mean, you're going to go spend billions, if not possibly trillions of dollars after bragging over the fact that you reduced the deficit by a little over $1 trillion. Golf clap. Golf clap. Let's look a little bit into this one here. From The Hill, Biden touts federal deficit, largest one-year drop in American history. From Eris Folly. President Biden on Friday touted a recent figure showing the federal budget deficit fell by $1.4 trillion in fiscal 2022 from the prior year's levels as Democrats work to fend off Republican attacks on the economy and inflation ahead of midterm elections. Good old non-partisan, non-biased news. Good job, The Hill. Biden boasted the decline is the largest one-year drop in American history in remarks to reporters on Friday. Let me repeat. The largest ever decline to the federal deficit. Repeat the line, he said. Let me be clear, period, that this record deficit reduction includes the cost of my student loan plan and everything else we're paying for. Pause dramatically. Janet Yellen also marked the numbers as further evidence of our historic economic recovery on Friday, shortly after her office released data showing the deficit reached $1.375 trillion in fiscal 2022, which ended last month. The Biden admin said the figure was $40 billion less than forecasted in Biden's 2023 budget and half the fiscal 2021 deficit, which reached $2.8 trillion, the second largest in history. The new reporting also found that as a percentage of GDP, the fiscal 2022 deficit was 6.8%, lower than the previous year. The president's economic plan is focused on growing our economy no, that's not Biden. Shalanda Young. From the bottom up and the middle out, Shalanda Young, director of the Office of Management and Budget, said in a statement. Under his leadership, more Americans are working today than at any point in our country's history. Citation needed, please, because we still have historically low workforce participation. Our economy has added more than 10 million jobs. No, it's brought 10 million jobs back that were lost under the pinko pox. Manufacturing is booming, and we cut last year's deficit in half. However, budget hawks and conservatives have seized on the news, pounced, if you will, sounding a different note by taking aim at Democrats' pandemic-related relief, like the American Rescue Plan and the Biden admin's recent student loan forgiveness plan, that they panned as costly amid rising inflation. We borrowed $1.4 trillion last year. That's not an accomplishment. It's a reminder of how precarious our fiscal situation remains, Maya McGinnis, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, said in a statement. The entirety of the decline in the deficit between 2021 and 2022 can be attributed to the expiration of temporary pinko pox relief, not due to a renewed era of fiscal responsibility, she said, while estimating the deficit would have been almost $400 billion lower had the Biden admin not decided to enact an inflationary, costly, and regressive student debt cancellation plan in August. The news on Friday comes weeks after Biden signed a sprawling climate, healthcare, and tax bill dubbed the Inflation Production Act into law. Yeah, they're going to go back and fire hose more money into the economy and then say that they lowered the deficit. I don't even believe that they lowered the deficit, I'm not going to lie. With everything that's gone out to the Ukraine, with everything that's been printed off, all the new temporary relief programs, the long-term relief programs, I look at things like that and I look at this number they keep trying to tout to us and I think that's a lie. But, you know, they're going to keep telling us that it's the truth and you better not question it. Otherwise, you're a racist, election-denying Trump supporter. Nancy Pelosi into the news. The stakes, Social Security and Medicare, which, by the way, still to this day has no co-sponsors, but they're still going to try to shove it down your throat for the election. A woman's right to choose, the planet, the cost of living, and cost of prescription drugs, which Democrats lowered with no Republican votes, all on the lines. Let's listen.
Social Security and Medicare are on the line. A woman's right to choose is on the line. The planet is on the line. Issues that relate to prescription drugs. Yes. For years, we've been trying to get the secretary to negotiate for lower prices. We couldn't get it done until we had the Democratic president and a strong majority, enough in the Congress to get it done. The fight is not about inflation, it's about the cost of living. And if you look at what we have done to bring down the cost of prescription drugs, to bring down the cost of energy and the rest in our legislation, you will see that that has been opposed every step of the way by the Republicans, and they have no plan for lowering the cost of living, or helping with inflation. If you're a senior, you have a lot at risk.
Yes.
If you're a childbearing age woman, you have a lot at risk if your family does. If you care about the planet, you have a lot at risk. They said it's a hoax. When we had the debate on our funding for addressing the climate crisis, not one Republican vote. When we talked about, so what we need to go forward with is more that we had in our agenda, and child care, child tax credit, issues like that.
But part of the problem is all the spending that you've done and all the money you've shipped out to Ukraine and everything else. And yes, of course, that's without the Republican votes. Because all these bills, and we sit down and we read all these bills. You guys sit with me and do it. We look at this kind of stuff and we say, hey, this is the pork that's in here. This is the problem that's in here. Hey, the anti-gouging bill. Hey, guess what? No, that had nothing to do with price gouging. That was offering more authority up to the executive branch without any oversight. I know. We read it. The baby formula bill that failed did nothing but fire hose more cash into Enfamil. It didn't do anything to increase the production or anything. It just said, hey, here's more cash. Do with it what you want. We have no oversight to this.
Social Security and Medicare are
Shut
on
up.
the line.
Shut up, you. From the Daily Wire, speaking of Pelosi. We have to change that subject. No, regret passing spending that boosted inflation. Speaker Pelosi expressed no regret during an interview Sunday morning about passing legislation that many experts have said turbocharged inflation. Pelosi made the remarks on Face the Nation with host Margaret Brennan when she was confronted with the reality that Republicans could win back the House during the next month's midterm elections. It's about getting out the vote, and everything else is a conversation compared to that. But in order to do that, you have to have inspiration. You can't run on empty. And the fact is that when I hear people talk about inflation, as I've heard him there, we have to change that subject. Inflation is a global phenomenon. It's not the fight. It's not about inflation. It's about the cost of living.
And the fact is that when I hear people talk about inflation, as I heard him there, we have to change that subject. Inflation is a global phenomenon.
Yes.
The EU, the European Union, the UK, the British have higher inflation rate than we do here. It's not, the fight is not about inflation, it's about the cost of living.
Yes, but you've inflated the cost of living and the wages haven't gone up with it. Pelosi claimed that government spending put people back to work, children in school, inoculations in the arm, and helped take us through that stage of the pandemic.
But on things like sending, those $1,400 checks, putting cash out there.
That's right.
I mean, didn't that end up contributing to inflation? Do you have any regrets about the bills you passed and how you structured them?
No, absolutely not, because that was necessary for people to survive. Our purpose
was that it was inflationary.
But the point is that when you reduce unemployment, it's inflationary. That is a fact.
What? When asked if she would remain in leadership in the new Congress that begins in January, Pelosi refused to answer that question.
You told Andrea Mitchell earlier this week, we need generational change, but in some cases there's no substitute for experience.
Right.
Will you remain in leadership in the new Congress.
I'm not talking about that. I'm here to talk about how we win the election.
But to deliver on all these things.
I was only paying Andrea a compliment for all the experience that she has.
I see.
But the fact is,
so you may or you may not.
I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about the future, America's working families, for the children. It's always about the children.
The future in which you lose the gavel twice. Fingers crossed. From Newsweek, Pelosi slammed for saying we have to change the subject from inflation. From Fatma Khalid, Speaker Pelosi, a California Democrat, was criticized on Sunday for downplaying inflation, which reached a rate of 8.2% in September, higher than the expected figure of 8.1%. Margaret Brennan asked Pelosi on Face the Nation about her thoughts on the projections that Republicans will win control of the House in the upcoming midterm elections. How do you shift the momentum? Pelosi responded with a long answer, which she mentioned inflation and described it as a global issue. No, the fact is that she said, no, just don't talk about it. We have to change the subject. Byron Donalds tweets out, we have to change the subject when it comes to inflation, says the lady who owns a $24,000 freezer stashed with $15 a pint ice cream. The Dem-induced inflation, or cost of living increase, is crushing the working class families, and they will vote Pelosi and the rest of them out on November 8th. Based. Arthur Schwartz, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want people talking about inflation. Ian Smith, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want you to talk about inflation. Focus on the Ukraine and climate, you worthless peasants. But that's pretty much what she said, too. Talk about the stuff we're winning on. Don't talk about the stuff we're failing on. Tim Young, the fight is not about inflation, it's about the cost of living, says Nancy Pelosi, who thinks you're too stupid to know that inflation directly impacts the cost of living. So, yeah, that is a let them eat cake moment. It really is. From CNN, video from CNN. Bernie Sanders. Republicans blame Biden for inflation? Really? Have not pre-watched. I will be hearing this for the first time with the rest of you.
Early voting has started in key states such as Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada. What are you seeing and hearing about energy among Democratic voters right now out there?
Well, I am worried about the level of voter turnout among young people and working people who will be voting Democratic. And I think, again, what Democrats have got to do is contrast their economic plan with the Republicans. What are the Republicans talking about? They want to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid at a time when millions of seniors are struggling to pay their bills. Do you think that's what we should be doing? Democrats should take that to them. Democrats want to have Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices. We pay 10 times more for the same drugs that are sold in Canada. Republicans refuse to do that. So I think what we have got to do is contrast what a strong pro-worker Democratic position is with the corporate agenda of the Republicans.
But to play devil's advocate here, if I'm a swing voter out there, a young voter, a working class voter, I hear your message, I think, but you guys control everything. Democrats control the House and the Senate and the White House, and inflation is really high, and I'm having a tough time making ends meet. Why should I vote for you again?
Well, we have half the votes, exactly half the votes in the Senate, and a tiny majority in the House. And I think it's important that when we talk about inflation, Republicans will say, well, this is Joe Biden's fault. Really? Our inflation rate is much too high. It is 8%. It is 10% in the UK, 10% throughout Europe, 7% in Canada. Inflation is a global problem caused, by the breaking of supply chains because of the pandemic, by the war in Ukraine. And as I said, significant part of inflation has to do with corporate greed. What are the Republicans' response to inflation? What do they want to do? Well, maybe they want to cut wages for workers. Do they want to raise the minimum wage? No, they don't. So I think it's important to take the attack to the Republicans. What do they want to do other than complain? But bottom...
Well, I want to stop spending money and sending it over to Ukraine. I want to put a cap on the amount of money the government can spend on a certain major disaster. And of course, as always, I would like most of the spending to go back to our local area, so when they come and tax your ass off, excuse my language, then they have to look you in the eye in the grocery store. That's the big one. And I'm not even a Republican.
Bottom line is, you cannot cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which is what they want to do. We have got to lower prescription drug costs, which is not what they want to do.
It's not what they want to do.
I want you to listen to this truly deranged...
Shut up, Tapper. Bernie Sanders makes excuses for Democrats on inflation, complains Republicans don't have a plan. From John Rigolizzo. We might skip over this just because we did the commentary with this. Let's skip this one. From Politico. Sanders, worried about Democrat midterm turnout, urges focus on the economy. But I don't think we can watch this video, because Politico's video player does have problems. Let's try, though.
I am worried about the level of voter turnout among young people and working people who will be voting Democratic. And I think, again, what Democrats...
Yep, 10 seconds in, and we just get the spinning wheel of death. All right, from Craig Howey, let's read into it instead. I don't know why Politico's video player does that. I don't know if it's just how it reacts with my computer or what it is, but yeah, it gets 10 seconds into any video and it just throws the spinning wheel of death. Bernie Sanders said Sunday he's worried about the turnout levels of young Democratic voters ahead of the November midterm elections. Asked by State of the Union host Jake Tapper about Democratic voters' energy levels, the Vermont senator said, I'm worried about the level of voter turnout among the young people. Yes, player timeout, we know. And working people who will be voting Democratic. Sanders continued to suggest that Democrats should frame their midterm approach around economic talking points and not abortion to drive turnout. Yeah, but you're failing on that. I agree that that should be the conversation, but your side is failing on that. That's the problem. I think, again, what Democrats have to do is contrast their economic plan with the Republicans. They want to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid at a time when millions of seniors are struggling to pay the bills. Well, no, they don't. Partially because they use all three of those the same way that you do, Bernie Sanders, as a piggy bank to fund their pet projects. And we all have to hope that you're going to actually pay it back. So what I think we have to do is contrast what a strong pro-worker Democratic position is with the corporate agenda of the Republicans. We have to be a strong pro-worker Democratic position while we take all of our donations from the big corporations that we say that we hate. Bernie Sanders, everybody. Let's talk about the Darrell Brooks case. From the Blaze, actually. Before we do that, we put a pin in something, and it's after 9:45. The manufacturing index. As long as we're talking about the economy and everything else. Manufacturing PMI drops to 49.9 versus 51.2 expected. From FX Street. It's kind of funny that I don't know that this is a green check verified source, but it's the only one who talked about it. Which probably tells me this is kind of bad news, because if this was good news, then CNN would be writing a fluff piece about it. Business activity in the U.S. manufacturing sector contracted slightly in early October, with the preliminary S&P Global Manufacturing PMI declining to 49.9 from 52 in September. This reading came in weaker than the market expectation of 51.2. We're at a stagflationary point, you guys. Further details on the publication revealed the services PMI slumped to 46 points. Ooh! 46.6 from 49.3, and the composite PMI fell to 47.3 from 49.5. Both of these prints fell short of analyst projections. Commenting on the data, the U.S. economic downturn gathered significant momentum in October, while confidence in the outlook also deteriorated sharply, noted Chris Williamson, chief business economist at the S&P Global Market Intelligence. The decline was led by a downward lurch in services activity fueled by the rising cost of living and tightening financial conditions. Williamson added, while the output in manufacturing remains more resilient for now, October saw a steep drop in the demand for goods, meaning current output is only being maintained by firms eating into backlogs of previously placed orders. That is stagflationary. That is brutal for the Democratic Party right now. They can't afford this. Oh. Just out of curiosity, the Dow is still rising, surprisingly, but this information just dropped. I would be curious to see what happens with this after they know that, your workers are in less demand right now. This is not good data. But with that, we will move out of the economy completely and go talk about the Darrell Brooks trial. We've got some interesting penal suggestions for Darrell Brooks. From the Blaze, this man right now is having a stare down with me. Judge in Waukesha Christmas Parade Massacre trial says suspect makes me scared, calls for break. From Dave Urbanski, and yeah, there he is having the stare down. The judge in the Waukesha Christmas Parade Massacre trial called for a break in Friday's proceedings, saying suspect Darrell Brooks was staring her down, pounding his fist and making her afraid. WLUK-TV reported. Brooks, who was representing himself, continually interrupted prosecuting attorneys, and Judge Jennifer Darrow ran out of patience, the station said. I need to take a break, Darrow said. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared, and we're taking a break. Oops.
Via OWI 2nd from 1997, and OWI 3rd from 1997, and OWI 4th from 2003, criminal trespass to dwelling from 2006.
Right, I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared. And we're taking a break.
Let's watch the whole clip. I know they put us right in the end and we didn't have the volume up, but let's actually go back.
I'm having the jury brought out. I'm instructing you to avoid the commentary when the jury comes out, or you will forfeit your right to be present.
Before we do that, there's an issue that we do need to take up, potential as to witness by the name of Abel Lescano. He has prior criminal history.
Thank you.
So as long as the jury's out, we should probably discuss that. I would like to provide the defendant and the court with a copy.
So that had to be said. So it's the defendant.
That's not how it was said.
That was how it said. You want to run the record back?
Mr. Brooks.
So I'm the only one. I got one.
Mr.
I got
Brooks.
one ear that work, and I heard that.
This
Come on,
is
man.
to benefit you so
No,
that
it's
you
not.
understand
Ain't none of
your
this to benefit me,
witness
so let's be
has
clear
a
about
prior
that.
record.
Your Honor, when I leave the table, I'm away from the courtroom and I have to elevate my voice. This is the
So she had to
alleged
elevate her
record of
voice
Abel
just for
Lescano.
that.
Stop talking.
Come on, man. Like, I don't know who y'all be thinking y'all fooling. I accept the value in return for value. Just document.
One more interruption and you're going to be removed to the next courtroom.
That's what you want to do anyway.
It's not what I want to do. Do not interrupt Attorney Opper.
So can
Your
you
Honor,
tell?
I
can you
believe he
explain?
has 7 prior criminal convictions via OWI 2nd from 1997, and OWI 3rd from 1997, and OWI 4th from 2003, criminal trespass to dwelling from 2006.
All right, I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared. And we're taking a break.
Just prior to Duro's announcement of the break, persecuting attorney was trying to speak and Brooks continually interrupted her. One more interruption and you're going to be removed to the next courtroom, Duro told Brooks. Well, that's what you want to do anyway. It's not what I want to do. The judge replied again, warning Brooks to refrain from interrupting. When the attorney spoke of Brooks' 7 prior criminal convictions, Brooks apparently pounded his fist on the table. Afterward, a camera focused on Brooks, who was staring angrily at the judge. Duro also said Brooks was purposely disrupting the proceedings to draw out the trial, WLUK reported, and Brooks replied that he felt extremely disrespected by that. Interestingly, when Brooks asked one of his witnesses, a parade attendee, if he saw who was driving the red SUV through the parade, the man replied, "Yeah, you're standing right there," the station said. When Duro said Brooks was trying to cast doubt on the integrity of the court, Brooks shouted, "This court ain't got no integrity," WLUK reported. Let's go on. Let's grab one from Fox 6 out of Milwaukee. Darrell Brooks trial, week 3, recap, judge threatens to end defense. From Fox 6 News digital team. Darrell Brooks could call his mother to the stand and testify himself Monday, October 24th, before the jury instructions begin in the Waukesha Christmas Parade trial. This after a shocking end to the 3rd week of the trial, which saw the defendant give the judge a stare down that she said scared her to the point where she had to call for a break in the proceedings. During the 3rd week of the trial, the state rested the case after calling 57 witnesses over 11 days before resting. The prosecution focused on Brooks' arrest the night of the parade attack and Brooks' subsequent interviews with detectives. The jury was also taken out of the courtroom to view the red SUV. Brooks then delivered his deferred opening statement, crying that he told the jury he was speaking from the heart. Brooks then began to call defense witnesses representing himself. On Monday, the first day of the 3rd week of the trial, prosecutors read Brooks a pretrial offer, which they said was given to Brooks' former attorneys in July 2021 and January 2022. Brooks fired his attorney days before the start of the trial. Brooks said he never received his pretrial offer. The state noted that it would involve Brooks pleading guilty to 67 of the charges in the case. He would then receive 6 life sentences for the 6 homicide charges filed against him and an unspecified prison on the other counts. Brooks continued his subject matter jurisdiction arguments on Monday, as he has every day during the trial. It relates to Brooks' sovereign citizen arguments. The SPLC says sovereign citizens believe that they are not under the jurisdiction of the federal government and consider themselves exempt from U.S. law. Judge Jennifer Duro referred to a written ruling issued on this matter on Friday, October 14th. Sean Backler, Waukesha homeowner. The first witness for the prosecution Monday was Sean Backler, who accused Brooks of trespassing in his yard the day of the Christmas parade. He identified Brooks in court as the person who saw in his yard that day. He said something seemed off about Brooks. He was wearing a t-shirt, no shoes, sweating. His eyes were huge. He was just acting. When he came out from the garage, he asked if I could call him an Uber, Backler said. Backler said he didn't call an Uber, telling Brooks to leave. On cross, Backler said he called the non-emergency line to report his encounter. I said the individual was either black, mixed, or Latino, said Backler. Backler added, I was positive it was you. Who's you? Brooks asked. You, I'm looking at you. Backler said the next morning he got the police report and the mugshot. I said, that's the guy. You were the guy in my yard. I was curious if you were the person and the one who did the atrocities in the parade. Dominic Caparoon was then called to the stand by the state and said Brooks came up to his driveway, lifted his shirt, and said he did not have any weapons. He needed a phone to call an Uber. Caparoon stated he handed him a phone. Caparoon positively identified Brooks as the man he'd met in his driveway. He testified he remembered a tattoo above Brooks' eye. He wasn't wearing a jacket or shoes, said Caparoon. He was wearing blue jeans and a red t-shirt. Caparoon later indicated he provided police with his phone so investigators could see who Brooks called on that date. He called somebody, which at the time I thought was Uber, said Caparoon. A lady called me, asked if she was an Uber, and she said, is she an Uber? He said Brooks eventually left. So, and we could go down through and check through a lot of the testimony, but really realistically, a lot of this comes down to I'm sitting here trying to disrupt the court to extend my life out of prison. It's the only thing I could think about for this. From the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Day 15 of the Waukesha Christmas Parade attack trial, Brooks stares down Duro, gets repeatedly removed from the court. From Bruce Vielmetti and Quinn Clark. Homicide suspect Darrell Brooks Jr. called his ex-girlfriend as a defense witness Friday morning as he began in earnest to present his defense, but the questioning soon went off the rails as he tried to introduce photographs he said she sent him well after November 21st Waukesha Christmas Parade tragedy. Brooks was repeatedly removed from the courtroom for disruptions, and a break was called when he met Waukesha County Circuit Judge Jennifer Duro with an unflinching stare-down. Brooks, 40, who's been representing himself over 3 weeks of the trial on 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and dozens of other counts of reckless injury and endangerment. He is charged with driving a red Ford Escape through the parade, killing and injuring participants and spectators. The violence came minutes after Brooks is accused of striking his ex-girlfriend, with whom he shares a 15-year-old daughter, during an argument in the vicinity of the parade. She's already testified for the state and been cross-examined by Brooks. His direct examination initially covered much of the same ground about how they came to meet at Frayne Park, a fight over money, her testimony that he'd struck her, and her reports to police. I believe because he is his own attorney that they can't do that. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is not publishing the woman's name or image because she's a victim of domestic violence. Let's see. Brooks erupts after Duro cuts off his direct examination of his ex. Brooks attempted to show her some photographs he said she mailed to him in jail after November 21st. He argued that it would attack her credibility because she had just testified she had no contact with him since that date. The state objected. Prosecutors had never seen the photos before Friday. They said they appeared as an attempt to cast the witness as a bad mother and as proof that she actually sent them to Brooks in jail. ADA Zach Witchow said the recorded jail phone calls show Brooks had been trying to get his mother to mail such photos. You can't be that stupid that you would make a call on a recorded line and then try to say that you didn't make it. Apparently you can. Brooks told DeRoe the photos came in a letter. She asked if the witness had signed it. He laughed and suggested no one signs letters to inmates. DeRoe asked if there was some other way that he could establish it was from the witness, such as identifying handwriting. Brooks said he hadn't brought the letter with him to court because it's devastating to his narrative. Witshaw also brought up that even if the witness was a bad mother, that would not have no impact on the credibility of her testimony about the events on the day of the parade. DeRoe has prohibited other acts of evidence from the trial because it could be prejudicial against Brooks, but warned him against questioning and comments could allow prosecutors to bring it up. Brooks became extremely agitated and disruptive at that point, leading to the early lunch break. DeRoe said he'd have to retrieve the actual letter he claims came with the photos before any argument about whether it would be admissible. Brooks removed from the courtroom twice more for more disruptive behavior. It's been a rough morning, to say the least, she added. Brooks' questions regarding how he met his ex and the child he has with her were improper, DeRoe said, and his disruptive and defiant behavior prompted her to remove him from the courtroom. DeRoe ultimately decided not to bring his ex back to the stand. Brooks eventually returned to the courtroom, but his interruptions continued, and he was again removed by DeRoe. Brooks then refused to call his next witness from a different room. He continued to raise his voice at DeRoe in objection to his removal, eventually slammed the headphones that he has used to hear the proceedings down on the table where he was seated. All I'm asking is you present yourself with integrity, decorum, and respect, DeRoe said. Brooks claimed prosecution coached his witnesses, scared DeRoe, calls for an impromptu break. Brooks called Deanna Aldrich and Christopher Bertram, two witnesses who saw the SUV that crashed through the route of the parade. Both said they saw the damaged car. Aldrich said that when it stopped and Bertram when it drove by, but did not get a clear view of the suspect. The prosecution did not cross-examine either witness, which made Brooks skeptical. I see this whole strategy here by the prosecution, he told DeRoe after she removed the jury. He said it was apparent that the witnesses had been coached by the prosecutors on how to answer his questions, which DeRoe called baseless claims. Brooks slammed the table with his fist and suddenly became silent. He fixed DeRoe with an unblinking stare. His mouth turned into a deep frown. In response, she called a break. Quite frankly, it makes me scared, DeRoe said. We'll finish off with this one here. We'll skip this one. DeRoe abruptly ends day 15 after Brooks' disparaging comments. How are you even a judge? Brooks' last two witnesses for the day were parade attendees Kathleen Urell, a mother of 4 children who were all injured while participating in the parade, and Catrice Badbias, who said she was injured by the incident but not physically. Brooks asked them if they recalled the driver's appearance where they were located during the parade. Urell did not remember the driver's appearance, but Badbias says she looked him right in the eyes. During cross, Urell tearfully recounted her children's severe injuries, including multiple broken bones and her 7-year-old daughter's severe concussion. Brooks refused to sit down during Badbias' cross, despite DeRoe's instructions to stop standing out of respect for the witness. He repeatedly objected to prosecutors' questions, which DeRoe overruled. It's always overruled, he said. Probably because you don't have standing for it. Brooks became increasingly angry during the redirect examination of Badbias, rolling his eyes and repeatedly asking the same questions about how she knew his name. DeRoe halted his questioning because of his argumentative nature. How are you even a judge? He said. In response, DeRoe abruptly ended witness testimony for the day. Brooks continued to raise his voice at DeRoe after the jury's removal, claiming the courtroom has no integrity whatsoever. He was then removed from the courtroom. Brooks says he intends to call his mother as his last witness, but as of Friday, it was unclear whether that would happen. Prosecutors rested their case Thursday after more than a week and a half of testimony. So, that's what's happening in the Darrell Brooks trial. I think this is an op-ed from Todd Richmond of the Associated Press. Parade suspects court's antics won't help appeal, experts say. From Todd Richmond. He has stripped his shirt off in court. He complains that prosecutors are slick. He won't let the judge get a word in. He won't even answer to his own name. The Wisconsin man, accused of killing 6 by driving his SUV through a Christmas parade, has worked to disrupt the trial ever since he decided to represent himself, dragging out a painful proceeding that appears destined to end with his conviction. The evidence against Darrell Brooks is overwhelming and includes videos showing his red Ford Escape plowing through the parade and witnesses testifying they saw him behind the wheel. He would face multiple mandatory life sentences if convicted. Brooks will certainly appeal any conviction, legal experts say, and his courtroom antics could be a ploy to frustrate Judge Jennifer Dorow into a misstep that would strengthen his case at that level, but they say Dorow has handled Brooks professionally and hasn't given him much to work with on the appeal. I am unaware of any issues that Dorow has created, or anything like that, said Thomas Grieve, a former prosecutor who now works as a criminal defense attorney in Madison. I think the judge has done a fantastic job of patiently addressing all of Mr. Brooks's issues, which seemed to have no end. He's gotten what he wanted. He made his bed and tucked himself into it throughout his entire process. Now he's facing the consequences of it. Prosecutors allege that Brooks got into a fight on November 21st with his ex-girlfriend on the streets of Waukesha in suburban Milwaukee, fled the scene in his SUV, and drove it into the parade. He plowed through groups, killing 6 people, including an 8-year-old boy, injuring dozens of others, according to a criminal complaint. He faces 76 charges, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and 61 counts of reckless endangerment. Each homicide carries a mandatory life sentence. Each reckless endangerment count carries a maximum of 17.5 years. Brooks initially pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease, but withdrew his plea in September without explanation. Just days before his trial began on October 3rd, he dismissed his public defenders and elected to represent himself. People representing themselves in civil manners is not uncommon, but it's relatively rare for criminal defendants to act as their own attorneys and risk matching wits with trained, experienced prosecutors. According to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, 4.8% of defendants in felony cases in the state were representing themselves when their cases ended last year. A number of high-profile criminals across the country have tried to represent themselves, though, including serial killer Ted Bundy and John Allen Muhammad, who was accused of launching sniper attacks in D.C. in 2002. Both Bundy and Muhammad were convicted and executed. Dorow had little choice but to allow Brooks to represent himself since he has the right under state law if he's mentally competent. Dorow noted psychologists found he has a personality disorder but is competent. So I'm pretty sure at this point now, looking through this op-ed, that is the point here. He's trying to get Judge Dorow to act in a manner unbecoming of a judge so he can come back out and say that he needs to be retried for this, to win an appeal off of this. Judicial misconduct. You know, kind of like Alex Jones is going to be able to get. But it's a horrifying way to do it. Let's talk about the flag. Microsoft's LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBIRAMITMYAR2 multiplied flag design represents 40 different individual LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBIRAMIRAI communities, including abrosexual, trigender, maverick, omnisexual, and more. Yes, this is a real headline. From Alex Nitzberg. In a move that illustrates that seemingly bottomless chasm of absurdity emanating from the proponents of the radical leftist gender ideology, Microsoft has posted a colorful graphic that says it represents dozens of LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYIARAMITY -sign communities. Inspired by the public's response for our 2022 Pride flag, we're expanding our design to represent 40 LGBTQIRAMIGIXTBYAIMIR -sign communities and making it available for everyone to use and build on. Microsoft tweeted. For the History Month, we've rebuilt Christopher Street Park in the metaverse and created a guided tour of the space. Inspired by the public's response to our 2022 Pride flag, we're expanding our design to represent 40 communities and making it available for everyone to use and build on. And there it is. Which, by the way, I believe it was a 4chaner made a flag similar to this, except had all the corporate logos on it. The tweet links to a GitHub page that lists various bizarre identities that are supposed to be represented within the graphic. This flag combines 40 different flags from the communities around the world, including abrosexual, aceflux, agender, ambiamorous, androgynous, aroous, aroflux, aromantic, asexual, bigender, bisexual, demifluid, demigender, demigirl, demiromantic, demisexual, gay, MLM, Vincinian, genderfluid, genderflux, genderqueer, gender questioning, graysexual, intersex, lesbian, maverick, neutrois, non-binary, omnisexual, pangender, pansexual, polyamorous, polysexual, transgender, trigender, two-spirit, progress, pride, queer, unlabeled. We're making it available here on GitHub for everyone to use and build on because Pride should be open source. That's right. Sell more products. Microsoft's tweet featuring the cluttered and colorful flag design drew attention on social media. Wow, I'm just so happy to be a normal person, tweeted Ellie Buttstucky. This is the design that represents all of America, former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker tweeted while sharing a gif of the U.S. flag. Can we all agree that corporate wokeism is fatuous and cringe-inducing? Christina Summers tweeted. Dude, how many of these are just made up? I'm telling you right off the bat. I don't know. And again, I really don't care who you screw. If you're a decent person, then we'll get along. Doug Ducey back in the news here. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey files lawsuit over shipping containers at border wall. From Fox 10 staff and the Associated Press. Arvolt with the answer. Thank you, Arvolt. Doug Ducey has filed a lawsuit after the federal government ordered Arizona to take down double-stacked shipping containers that are filling gaps along the U.S.-Mexico border wall. On Friday, Ducey said in a news release that the lack of planning and action from the Biden admin demonstrate that border states like Arizona cannot rely on the federal government to ensure its security. Our border communities are overwhelmed by illegal activity as a result of the Biden admin's failure to secure the southern border. Ducey said Arizona is taking action to protest on behalf of our citizens. With this lawsuit, we're pushing back against efforts by the federal bureaucrats to reverse the progress we've made. The safety and security of Arizona and its citizens must not be ignored. Arizona is going to do the job that Joe Biden refuses to do, secure the border in any way that we can. We are not backing down. Ducey ordered the installation of more than 100 double-stacked containers that were placed along the wall near Yuma over the summer, saying that he couldn't wait for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection to award the contracts that it had announced for work to fill the gaps in the border wall in the border area. The Bureau of Reclamation sent a letter last week calling for the existing containers to be removed and no new ones placed. The letter said the Bureau wanted to prevent the conflicts with 2 federal contracts that already awarded, and 2 more are pending to fill the 2 border wall gaps near the Morelos Dam and the Yuma area. The unauthorized placement of those containers constitutes a violation of federal law and is a trespass against the United States. The letter states that trespass is harming federal lands and resources and impeding Reclamation's ability to perform its mission. Okay, what about the people who are trespassing in the United States? The Arizona Department of Emergency and Military Affairs wrote a letter to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation saying, "Screw you," basically. In actual quote, the containers will remain in place until specific details regarding the construction are provided. It was signed by Alan Clark, the department's director. Meanwhile, the Cocopa tribe is also requesting the state remove the shipping containers that have been placed on some of the gaps in the Yuma area. Tribal officials added that they will continue to work with federal, state, and local law enforcement in efforts to secure the border. They say that they have worked alongside the Border Patrol for the last 20 years. We approved the installation of camera Border Patrol uses, the ground sensors, and construction of Normandy-style barrier for the white man, the tribal official said. That's probably going to get me shut down on YouTube. Making fun of the great natives. Let's talk about our neighbors to the north here and our friends from NPR. Trudeau orders an immediate freeze on the sale of handguns in Canada, from Julia Hayward. And if you want that to happen here, make sure you hit that donate button, because we can only tell you how bad guns are and how evil they are and how they will kill every one of you if you hit that donate button and help us get these quiet microphones that we can tell you what to think and how to feel, because it's too hard to think and feel for yourself. Let us tell you how to do it by hitting that donate button, because your taxpayer money is not enough. And BR, National Progressive Radio, never printing reality. Let's see what it is that they have to say. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is placing a nationwide freeze on the sale, purchase, and transfer of handguns effective immediately. The handgun freeze is the latest in an ongoing battle among Canadian lawmakers over gun control measures. In Parliament, legislators are still debating on the passage of a bill introduced in May that would be one of the strongest pieces of gun control legislation in decades. The new handgun freeze is an immediate action the Trudeau admin said is taking as a conversation around the bill continues. When people are being killed, when people are being hurt, responsible leadership requires us to act, Trudeau said in a news conference on Friday, announcing the new measure. Recently, again, we've seen too many examples of horrific tragedies involving firearms, In addition to ban on handgun sales, it's also now forbidden to bring newly acquired handguns into Canada. The freeze is being met with elation from gun reform groups who welcome the immediate action. Reducing the proliferation of handguns is one important example of the evidence-based measures. Canada needs to reduce gun violence and save lives, Canadian Doctors for Protection from Guns tweeted in response to the news. But the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights argues that placing stricter legislation on guns does not decrease gun violence. Shootings in Canada are on the rise, although the rate of violent deaths by firearms, there is still a fraction of those in the U.S. Trudeau began steadily introducing gun reforms after one of Canada's deadliest shootings in history 2 years ago. The PM banned 1,500 models of assault-style firearms and variants of the AR-style platform in 2020. But let's not just hear it from NPR. Let's listen to the man himself. And I use that term loosely. From today forward, it's no longer legal to buy, sell, or transfer a handgun in Canada, eh?
In May, our government introduced measures to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. Today, our national freeze on handguns is coming into force. From today forward, it is no longer legal to buy, sell, or transfer a handgun in Canada. In May, our government introduced measures to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. Today,
we get rid of your handguns, and I will put on some dark makeup, even onto my hands, and dress up. But don't worry, it's not blackface. Pay attention to that kind of stuff, because they want to bring that crap here. Alright, what else do we have? I know we gotta start getting ready to power it down pretty quick, but I think we can get through most of the rest of this. But I do have an appointment, so like I can't sit and stay. Unfortunately. Bags of poop thrown at home of socialist Seattle official who led defund the police efforts. She says cops are dragging their feet on catching the culprit. Justice, maybe? I don't know. From Dave Urbanski. Bags of poop have been thrown at the home of Socialist Seattle Councilmember Kshama Sawant. Despite leading efforts to defund the city's police department in 2020, Sawant is saying police are dragging their feet on finding the culprit. Yeah, oh. Conservative commentator Jason Rance initially reported that Sawant demanded that police post officers outside her home, defunded officers of course, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. until the suspect is arrested, according to multiple sources who spoke to Rance on the condition of anonymity. Rance added that Sawant's request came as the department is dangerously understaffed. Thanks to her efforts to defund and dismantle the department since 2020, the SPD has lost 135 officers last year, nearly 500 since 2020, and cannot meet the staffing minimums across any precincts and watch. Soon, KCPQ-TV reported that Sawant wrote a letter to officials claiming Seattle police are failing to investigate who threw bags of human waste into her yard 6 times. They missed a word here. The sentence just reads, whoops, who threw bags of human into her yard 6 times, but I'm going to say it's probably going to be human waste, given the nature of the story that we're doing here. Most recently, on October 13th, she added that one of these incidences was followed by a threatening email sent to her city council office, the station calling her the queen of crap, and saying, "You can sit on your throne of human excrement." Sawant, a member of Socialist Alternative, suspects the attacks are politically motivated, KCPQ reported. She also claimed the police have been dragging their feet, closing the investigation Tuesday just 5 days after it began. The station said Sawant added that one bag of poop was thrown on her lawn. A police officer allegedly asked her husband, "What do you expect us to do?" Look, lady, you begged these people, you begged your people to defund these people so they can't do their job effectively. So at this point, I would say, rake out the free fertilizer. Hold your nose for a couple days when you walk past it and get on with your life. That's what I would say at this point. On the other side of things, here's one out of our neighbors to the south in Chicago. Here's what you can do if you're afraid of carjacking. Help deter carjacking by allowing car tracking. No! From Chip Brewster and Christine Flores. Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart has announced a new anti-carjacking initiative where the public can pre-authorize tracking of vehicles if carjacked. During a Thursday morning press conference, Dart explained to the Cook County Sheriff's Office has been working with manufacturers to track vehicles as soon as possible after they've been reported stolen. However, he noted that some companies are more difficult to work with than others, and having a pre-authorization from a vehicle's owner to give the manufacturer would help smooth the process. To aid that effort, Dart announced a new online application for motorists to provide digital consent form to CCSO. Those who sign up would also receive a free set of CCSO stickers for their vehicles stating the car has been tracked by the department. The sticker is designed to help deter offenders and prevent the crime from happening in the first place. And totally will not be used for any other purpose by a government. Just trust us, bro. What is the CCSO's Tracked Vehicle Partnership? The CCSO created a program to allow the public to give consent for law enforcement to access vehicle tracking information through the manufacturer in the event the car is illegally taken. Those of you who have GM products already have this. It's called OnStar. Anyone who has a vehicle registered in Cook County may sign up. Is my car trackable? The CCSO recommends you check with your dealer or vehicle manufacturer to verify if your car has tracking capabilities. Mine does not. You can sign up for CCSO Tracked Vehicle Partnership by visiting cookcountysheriff.org/car-track-consent. So there you go. What should I do if my vehicle is carjacked? When safe to do so, call 911 and notify responding law enforcement that you have consent form on file with the CCSO. And again, it will totally never get used for anything inappropriate. Just for carjacking, trust us. From CBS, Texas State Trooper fired over his response to Uvalde shooting. No author given. The Texas Department of Public Safety has fired a trooper who responded to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, which claimed the lives of 19 students and 2 teachers. The fired trooper, based by the way, identified as Sergeant Juan Maldonado. The CBS News learned Friday Maldonado is the 3rd officer to be fired over the botched law enforcement response to the shooting. This is also based, but my based was commenting on Jake's comment over there. Based. According to the Texas Tribune, police body cam footage showed that Maldonado was on the scene at the school within 4 minutes of the shooting. Get rid of that. But did not enter the school. The Tribune reports that a Uvalde Police Department SWAT commander, who suffered a graze wound from a bullet fired by the gunman, came out of the school door and told Maldonado, "Dude, we gotta get in there." Maldonado reported DPS is sending people. The Tribune reports. God, we must be going over 2 hours at this point, because I'm starting to trip over my words. Oh, we're not quite to 2 hours yet, because I did start a little bit late today. DPS had reported last month that at least 5 of its troopers were under investigation for their response to the shooting. This all comes after the entire department for the Uvalde Consolidated Independent District was suspended earlier this month after it faces multiple investigations. That suspension also came just a day after the firing of Uvalde School Police Commissioner Crimson Elizondo, a former DPS trooper who was also on the scene at the Uvalde shooting. Elizondo had responded to the shooting at Robb. As a Texas State Trooper, Elizondo resigned from the DPS after the attack, but was subsequently hired by the Uvalde School District as a police officer. According to the CNN, Elizondo could be heard in body camera footage from the day of the shooting, telling the other officers at the scene, "If my son had been in there, I would not have been outside, I promise you that." So good. I mean, I still allege that this was all set up to begin with, because how does a kid like that get his hands on something that expensive on a burger flipper salary? But we'll never get a response to that question. Ever. But the people who couldn't go back and be bothered to go back and try to do their jobs? Yeah, good. Screw them. Fire them. Fire them all. That is the dumbest Amazon commercial I've ever seen in my life. Another one from our friends over at NPR. Apple CEO Tim Cook's fix for those pesky green text bubbles. Buy your mom an iPhone, but before you buy that iPhone, make sure that you hit that donate button. And you get all that money out there so we can tell you that don't let the peasants have Android. They can only have high-class iPhone. Ooh, we got a new sub. Resub for a month. Hooray and thank you. This is from Joe Hernandez, and remember, never printing reality, National Progressive Radio. Sorry, Android users, those green bubbles that appear around text messages you send to your friends and family with iPhones don't appear to be going away anytime soon. Who cares? Who literally cares? Apple CEO Tim Cook seemed to reject the idea of adopting a new messaging protocol on the company's devices that would make communicating with Android users smoother. I don't hear our users asking that. We put a lot of energy in it on that point, Cook said about implementing the RCS standard on iPhones, according to The Verge, when he was speaking during Vox Media's Code 2022 event on Wednesday. Apple uses its own iMessage service. When Vox Media's Liquan Hunt complained that to Cook that his mother couldn't see the videos that he'd sent her because they had different phones, the Apple chief replied, "Buy your mom an iPhone." Hey, Apple chief guy, go and screw yourself. The blue and green bubbles explained. In the early days of mobile messaging, cell phone users could send each other short text messages of no more than 160 characters. That was called SMS, or short media service. Really? I thought it was single media service. MMS, or multimedia message service, built on that by allowing users to send a photo or a short video. Now, texting is much more than that. That's where RCS, which stands for Rich Communication Services, comes in. RCS is a new messaging standard used by Google and other telecom companies that supports group chats and read receipts, lets users send high-quality photos and videos, and has end-to-end encryption, among other features. If it sounds a lot like iMessage, that's because it is. But iMessage is only available to Apple users. When an Android user texts someone with an iPhone, their message appears as an SMS or MMS message, because Apple doesn't support RCS, hence the pixelated images and buggy group chats. Texts sent via iMessage show up as blue bubbles on iPhones, while other SMS, MMS counterparts are green. Google rolled out RCS for Android in the US in 2019, the company has launched a PR campaign aimed at shaming Apple into adopting RCS, but so far the iPhone maker hasn't budged. You know, Discord has group chat. You know, Twitter has group chat. I know at least one person in this audience is an iPhone user. And we never have a problem communicating. Ever. Line has group chat, by the way. You can use that. Across all platforms, you can use that. What else has group chat? Gilded. Instagram. Not that I recommend that you go use Zuckerberg's platform. And yes, that is in spite of the fact that I do use Zuckerberg's platform. But, you know, there's Google Chat that you can use on an iPhone. And all this stuff works across platform. YouTube chat. That works across platform. You can do that. Excuse me. Yeah, AOL Instant Messenger. Although I think that has lost all of its support at this point. Yeah, there are 1,000 different ways to communicate with other people. Other than using Google and Apple's crappy text messaging services. That work across platform. All right, we are at 9:55, and I do have a hard out. So I do think that we might have to just call it as it is and go on from there. But the last thing that we do on Monday is we do look at the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition, which apparently I got called out for on an earlier show last week, which is fine. I don't care because I do enjoy this. And yes, I am geeky. So last week we looked at, and by the way, we do this because I am an ultra-capitalist, and we have come out with a series of, well, the Trek universe came out with a series of rules on how to conduct yourself as an ultra-capitalist. And I do hope that someday, if I can't go to heaven, that is my first choice. If I can't go to heaven, I do hope that I can go to the Grand Treasury instead. So we looked at the 104th Rule of Acquisition, Faith Moves Mountains of Inventory, last week. Now we look at one, again, coming from Beta Canon from a DS9 novel, Sacraments of Fire, the 106th Rule of Acquisition. There is no honor in poverty. That one hurts a little bit. But I get it. I actually do. This is one that we can actually do in real life, that we can look at our real lives from, and that's because I have been in poverty. In spite of the fact that there was no government program out there for me, I can say that I was in poverty. I was below the poverty line, no matter what it is they came back to try to tell me that I was. You know, you're not eligible for unemployment, you're not eligible for this, you're not eligible for that because you make too much money, or you made too much money, even though you didn't make that much money actually. But what I can tell you is this. When I was there, when I was at the bottom, there's no honor in it. Running out, trying to find any sort of menial work that you can do under the table to try to keep the taxes from being taken off. To get a bite to eat. And I can see where people that live in that situation resort to theft, resort to crime, resort to armed robbery, because it sucks. There's no honor in being at that point. And we should, as ultra-capitalists, be doing everything we can to try to increase our situation. And if, by the way, if that means playing two employers off each other, then play two employers off each other. If that means coming in and moving up somebody's timeline, move up somebody's timeline. You can be honorable and be poor. It's just harder because as you get hungrier and hungrier, and especially as your kids and your progeny get hungrier and hungrier, if that applies to you, you start to try to make deals with yourself morally. There's no honor in poverty. So instead, we work ourselves out to try to become profitable, increase our profits, make sure we can get into that grand treasury, and make sure that also in honor that we can help other people as well. I've said for a long time, I want to get rich, partially because I want to be able to raise a family comfortably, do well that way, etc. But I also want to do more for charity. I want to build up and start my own revolving charity for the thought of suicide prevention. The more money I have, the more I can do for charity. The less money I have, the less I can do for charity. So there's an honor aspect to that as well. But there is no honor in poverty. Get yourself out of that if you're there. Work hard. The Edgeworld audience, the contemporary audience, you guys are all very, very industrious, and I admire that about you. So let's do everything we can to keep you guys up out of that. Make sure that you guys are still coming in, doing well, and keep all the people that we care about out of that poverty. And then we'll get into the grand treasury at the end. But with that, it is 9:59, which means that I've got to head out of here. Is Ignoramus on? We'll find out. I'm gonna have to mute right away. Otherwise I'll hear myself. Okay, I don't know why the mute wasn't working. No, he's not on yet, so we'll probably have to go over and see our friend Uncle Lander instead. But yeah, I do have to get out of here right now, so we got to cut it a little bit early. Under normal circumstances, we'd probably go until like 10, 10:15, 10:30 or something like that, just to get through some of the stuff. But I gotta get some clothes on and get across the state. Well, I have some clothes on, but let's head out of here for the day. Where's my outro music? There it is. All right, so with that, we're out of here for the day. We'll be back here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. I have got an appointment to get to, so I've got to get out of here, get in the truck, and start driving. So, and I still need fuel, by the way, because what I have right now will get me about to Madison, and we all know that I will not spend money in Dane County. So, we will see you here tomorrow for more news, more headlines. There is 99.999% chance that there will not be a game stream tonight. Because I don't think after having an appointment at 2.5 hours away, I can get back here by 5:30. And I don't want to rush for that either. So we will see you here tomorrow for more news, more headlines. And back here on Saturday for more Mass Effect. Definitely hoping to look forward to that. And also, by the way, keep in mind, keep your schedules open. We will be doing election live stream. I don't know what I'm going to be doing for that yet, but I'm sure that I'll get some guests and some people on for that. We'll go discuss what's happening there. I want to get as many people from as many states as possible and just see what the exit polling looks like and what the general air is in your precinct, even though I don't want people to tell me what their precincts are. So we'll see what's happening with that. We will go from that. We will be back here tomorrow to see what kind of stupid things the Biden admin says and what kind of stupid things the government does. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.